Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, this is Craig. If you're a musician, I made a special 3-question survey for you at everyonelovesguitar.com/survey. Again, musicians only. Complete this 3-question survey at everyonelovesguitar.com/survey. Alrighty now, let's do this. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber, and welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, and we're with Ted Russell Kamp. Ted's a multi-instrumentalist, actually. He's a really successful bass player, and on his own records, he plays bass and guitar, and probably some other things if I know him. But he's toured the world as a singer-songwriter. He's released 8 solo albums, as well as being an in-demand producer and session musician in LA. He's produced about 15 records, not including his own records. His record, Get Back to the Land, debuted at #1 on the Euro-Americana chart, and his last 4 records have made U.S. Americana charts top 100 records of the year. As a bassist, he's been playing with Shooter Jennings since 2004. Dude, that's 14 years. That's like a lifetime in the music business.
I know.
Wow.
I know. Longest gig I've ever had.
Yeah. He's also played with Wilson Phillips, some great people he played with, Jessi Colter, Wanda Jackson, Rosie Flores, Ray Cyrus, and countless other great artists, both on the road and in the studio. Ted, thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Man, you've been playing, we just talked about, with Shooter since 2004. I just had a few questions. How'd you first get that gig, and what were you doing musically right before that?
Let's see. If we go back a few years before I met Shooter, I had moved to LA, and I was just kind of doing every gig I could get. You know, when you first move to town, you're kind of the low man on the totem pole.
Yes.
So most of it was rock, some was country, some was there were some blues jams that were kind of the first and easiest thing to find in LA. So I started playing those and playing in kind of the blues circuit around here a little bit. And then I was getting more and more aware that the rootsy rock and roll and the country was kind of my forte. The really adding American roots music to it. So there's a little bit of New Orleans-y Little Feat in there. There is definitely some Graham Parsons and some country rock. There is definitely some Stonesy and Tom Petty and Beatles influence. So I kind of started getting into that rootsy world and realizing that I didn't want a big pop gig.
Yeah.
I would rather keep it more in line with music I love. And I felt that there's more heart there, you know? And so I started playing around town a lot, and kind of as I was in town for a couple of years, I was kind of weeding out the stuff I didn't really enjoy doing, and getting more into the rootsy side of things. And it wasn't really called Americana yet.
Right.
But that's what it was. And Shooter was putting together a new band, which became his band for those first bunch of records that he did. And his guitarist and another good friend of his both said, "Hey, you need a bass player. You got to call Ted. Ted's perfect for you."
Oh, that's cool. Two people.
He loves country. He loves the rock. He loves the 70s thing. And he's just perfect. So Shooter had another bass player that kind of wasn't working out. She was a little more of a rock, like really got the hard rock stuff, but not the country.
Right.
And so one of these two guys just called me up and said, "Hey, Shooter's going to give you a call. I just gave him your number." And so I think because he got my name from two people and like back to back, he called me up, and we had this kind of jam audition, and going out for a couple drinks one night in Hollywood, and the chemistry was really good right away. I immediately liked him and instinctively kind of got his music, and where he was coming from, and it was great. So that's kind of like almost from the first note, it worked really well.
That's great, man.
And then we started kind of jamming every couple of weeks. Then he did. He had a gig at the Viper Room, which was the first that I played with him. And I was still freelancing and doing a million other bands.
Sure.
For a while. Then we recorded that first record, and then it came out in early 2005. And that's when we really kind of like did it for a little while in a band, but kind of went to the tour bus pretty quickly, and just been going and going and going.
That's a cool story, man. What would have been the biggest changes in, both for yourself musically with playing with Shooter and in just the evolution of the band and Hierophant and all that stuff in general?
Well, when we first started out, it was just four of us. It was Shooter, and then I played bass, but then Brian Keeling played drums, and Leroy Powell played guitar, and then started playing pedal steel as well. And it was like everybody in the band was a real powerhouse and had a lot to say. And actually, Shooter was thinking about having a bigger band, because in country music, especially, you have one guy who's a great harmony singer who plays acoustic guitar. You might have a fiddle player. You might have a multi-instrumentalist. And I was actually, after I joined and it started feeling really good, after about a month, I said, Shooter, we shouldn't have any more people. We could be the Zeppelin of country. And that's cooler than having 7 people.
Yeah.
Each of which play a small part in the sound. This way, you've got the talent, and we all have our own voice and what we like to do. So let's give us all the space, and then you hear those records, and you can hear all of us. You can hear all 4 of us really vividly, rather than all of us playing safe, and then a short little moment of a guitar solo. You know what I mean?
And he plays keys, correct?
Shooter plays guitar and keys.
Okay,
both well.
Yeah.
So depending on the year, he'll do only guitar. Or varying amount of keyboards. This last year on the road, he's doing about half keyboards, half guitar.
Okay.
He's been doing a lot of piano, which is cool. So we had that 4-piece band for I think about 3 full years. So the first 3 Shooter records, and we did a Waylon record where Shooter found a bunch of old recordings that he did with Waylon when he was a kid. So we kind of muted everything except for Waylon's guitar and vocals, and then we recorded.
Cool. New
music to that stuff, which was really amazing experience. That record's called Waylon Forever. It's real powerful. And it was a pretty heavy experience hearing Waylon Jennings come through your headphones while you're recording a song. And some of those songs were not really associated with Waylon, and some were kind of like classic Waylon tracks. So it was pretty great to do that. Then we had a few different guitarists, pedal steel players for a few years. Then when Shooter did the record Hierophant, or Black Ribbons.
Great record.
We got a Hammond player, and a new guitarist. I got a John Schreffler who has been in the band pretty much since then. And that was a great album, much darker and moodier. It was more of a concept album than anything Shooter had done before. So that way, we kind of all knew it at the time, but Shooter really wanted to go for it. We knew it would be risky. So he lost definitely a lot of the more conservative fans. Kind of got confused, because it was definitely not a Willie and Waylon or Southern rock record the way they were used to.
That song.
Then there was then Shooter moved to New York for a little while and actually did 2 records with a New York band. So I was not involved for maybe 2012 and 13, maybe 14. And at that point, I believe I put out Get Back to the Land and Night Owl. I did a lot of touring on my own for about 2 years. I was booking myself, and I would do 2 weeks at home and 2 weeks on the road every month, and just cycle it through. And I did that for about 2 years. Then I started getting more production work and coming back to LA more. And then shortly after that, Shooter started producing some records and bringing me in to play bass. And then our kind of friendship kind of immediately rekindled. Like, out of all the stuff that we all kind of went through, Shooter and I never really had any problems.
Right.
There were some other band members who were going through some other stuff and was more drama and whatever else. But Shooter and I kind of were a good team, kind of pretty consistently the whole time. So then when we started playing together again, it was like, wow, this is just great. You know, and I was kind of the musical director for some of those. Shooter's not really a music theory guy. He does a lot of it by feel, totally gets the stories. He's a great musician. But having me in the studio, like, I could describe what, you know, I could kind of immediately kind of sense what Shooter was going for and describe it to the other musicians. So it's like, oh, this goes to the 6th chord here, and let's do the major, you know, the dominant 3 chord here, and all this other stuff that Shooter is not really comfortable as much talking in that language.
Yep.
And I also really love the arranging. Like, even from day one, I was always like, oh, let's tag this, and let's have a bridge go here, and how about this chord, and hey, we don't use this yet. You know what I mean? So that kind of arranging, I think, has always been kind of one of my strong points. So, and one of the things I really love doing. So when Shooter was producing these other records, I could come in and say, oh, well, how about, you know, helping with the arranging. And then that evolved into bringing John back. And then I actually introduced Shooter to our current violinist and drummer, who are both great LA musicians that I've done a ton of gigs with. So we kind of evolved into Shooter's band. And then that's been the touring band with Shooter for the last couple of years. It's been really good.
A few questions about some of the stuff you talked about. The first is, you had this song on that record. It's like one of my all-time favorite just songs in general. All of This Could Have Been Yours. I'm sure it's a lot of people's favorite.
Oh, that's a heavy one. Yeah.
Oh, what a great song, man. Is that like, do you close out with that? That's like the kind of song you close a night with, no?
That song is usually, actually, I'm going to go outside for a second. That song is like usually about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through the set.
Yeah.
And it's a real climax. And now we've got this like really righteous solo section and jam part of it. Yeah, it's a powerful one. And that's really kind of the centerpiece for that record.
Yeah. I think
it's at least one of them.
It's like in C minor, if I remember, or maybe G minor or something like that. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, because I always used to play to it a lot because it's a great song, man. The chord.
Wow.
Yeah, well, the changes in there are really good.
Another really cool thing I like about that song is it has all these different sections. No, but I mean, one of the obvious things you do when you write a song, especially if you want it to be kind of an accessible song, is you repeat sections.
Yeah.
Like you'll have a verse and then the pre-chorus or a chorus, and then the second verse is basically exactly the same but with new lyrics.
Yes, that's what that's.
Every time you get to a chorus, you want it to be the same. But one of the coolest things about All This Could Have Been Yours is that kind of each verse is different. It keeps doing similar things, but they're different, and so it's this very kind of orchestral song.
And it's really nice intro as well, with keyboards, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, really good song. I love that, and that a whole record. But I love that song. Is just I played it like 2 nights ago here because it was just really.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's a great.
Hey, if you want to check out When the Radio Goes Dead,
okay,
it's one of the last songs on. That's one of the ones on that record. That's the one that I wrote on that song, on that album.
When the Radio Goes Dead.
Yeah,
I will check it out. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I give you credit. You know, I think a lot of people might have been paralyzed in a situation where, oh my God, you know, my gig is gone, and you went out and toured on your own for 2 years and cut a couple of records. I think that, you know, that's a pat on the back for doing that, man. It's not like,
thank you.
Yeah. You know, I think it's one of those things where you're like, fuck, what do I do now? And you can sink or swim, and you swim, you know, or you swam.
That was one of the reasons I think that I've worked so well with Shooter. Is I had already been a professional musician for a good 10 years before we even met. So I had a lot of those sink or swim moments.
Yeah.
Where sometimes, you know, one of the classic things, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners will get this, a lot of session musicians really want to be in a band.
Yes.
They really want that feeling of camaraderie. And that feeling of like when you were in high school with your buddies and this combined mission, you know. And then a lot of the musicians who are in a band wish they could be freelance guys.
Yeah, grass is always greener.
Because they love being eclectic, and they want.
You don't have to go on the road.
Yeah, and like that's one of the things I miss when we tour a lot with Shooter is I miss doing other kinds of music. Like I love playing soul music. I used to be in a ska band when I was younger.
Right.
I love mellow or singer-songwriter stuff. So it's like I yearn for this other stuff. And there are also it's almost like different muscles and different skills you use when you're a freelance guy.
Totally, man.
Like I love, there have been weeks of my life where I'm playing 5 or 6 nights a week with a different band each night.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly getting new music and having to learn and absorb new music and be a different side of yourself to do it well. There's a real thrill to kind of be supportive, but be yourself at the same time.
Sure.
And find the way to do the gig the best, but in a way that only you can do.
So let me ask you this. How did you book these gigs? Like, I don't mean this in a funny way, but you hadn't been a band and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I have a couple of records. I want to go tour. And you're calling someone up that, a lot of people would say, I can't do that. How did you do that?
Well, I had already had a few records I started putting out my own records really right around the time we put out that first Shooter record.
Okay.
And like I remember thinking like, wow, I have this great band in LA. I got a bunch of good songs. I want to put this record out and I'm going to be on the road all of next year with Shooter. I better finish this record and put it out now. So I put out a couple records while I was touring with Shooter, and not doing a lot of my own gigs. And then actually wonderfully what happened was we only did one tour with Shooter in Europe. And I think it was like 2007. But half the promoters said, hey, and if you ever want to come to Europe, let me know.
Oh, so you had the rapport with some of these guys.
Because they're like, I already have your records and I love your music.
Holy shit.
I said, hey, it's not going to be as big a show as we do with Shooter. Shooter can come to Madrid and play for 500 people.
Yeah.
And I could I could come and maybe play for 50.
Sure.
They're definitely music lovers. And kind of Americana people and a lot of songwriters and other musicians are my fans. But they all said, we totally understand and let's do it. Okay. So at the end of 2011, when we were going to take the break from Shooter, I just kind of emailed them all. And also after 2007, I realized I started every time I got a request from some DJ of, hey, can you send me your music? I would write it down and I'd stay in touch with them.
Good for you, man.
And then I started saying like, hey, are you a promoter or are you friends with one? Or where would guys like me play in Bremen or in Eindhoven or in Gothenburg, Sweden?
Sure.
So I started getting this list. And actually, even before 2011, I started doing some touring on my own where I would go to Texas and do a week or two of dates, or I'd go to Nashville and write for a little while, and then I would do a week or two of shows around the Southeast. So I was already doing some touring in between all of our Shooter dates.
Good for you, man.
And I was usually going to Europe every winter because Shooter likes to take the winter off. So like December, January, we're usually off. So that, thankfully, but not so thankfully in terms of the temperature. Like my first time in like Sweden and Finland were like 20 below zero.
Yeah,
I'm there in February.
Holy shit!
But I started a good scene and a good bunch of shows that I can do, and I got a lot of friends in Europe now. And so when it came time to when Shooter said, "Hey, I got to do other things," Black Ribbons was hard. I'm going to take some time off and regroup. Then I kind of thought about it and I was like, yeah, let's try it. Let's do my own thing for a while.
Look, honestly, man,
and it worked. It worked well.
It's a big thing. Do you have like a marketing background? Because most musicians, like I've been running a marketing company for 20 years. And so I love talking about, business marketing. Yeah. That's like my gig. And, most guys I talk to, like musicians are just like kind of allergic to marketing.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like I'm pretty good at marketing. I'm not amazing. I think if I was amazing, I would have probably, like one of my problems in terms of marketing is I'm really eclectic. Right. Like I don't want to have a record where 11 songs all sound the same.
That's a common.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating when you get a record and it's like wow, I love tracks 1, 2, and 3, and then the other ones just sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of not as good.
Right.
So that's why these were the singles, you know?
Yeah.
But I love having, you know, some songs that are funkier and more playful, some songs that are more honky-tonk, some songs that are kind of straight up like Jackson Browne out of the 70s.
Yeah.
Some songs that are, ride the line between country and soul.
Right.
You know? And so I believe if I had kind of been more of just a honky-tonk guy or a soul guy or a thoughtful singer-songwriter guy, then I would have been more marketable and I may have been more successful outside of the musician world. You know what I mean?
I totally get it.
But I really kind of love that. I don't want my records to get boring. I want my records to kind of express all these different sides of my personality.
Sure.
And friendships that I have with different people, rather than just have it be such a specific genre.
Well, you can't make music to sell or for marketing. That's like so. It's never gonna work because music is such an authentic, heartfelt thing.
It's got to be real.
You can't. Yeah.
But I love it. Like especially when I was doing my solo stuff a lot. You know, there's a lot of playing the politics of it is fun, and getting to it's one of the great things about the music industry where the most famous person to schmooze with is often the most fun to hang with.
Yeah.
So you kind of get to know different people in different scenes and you become friends with them.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and some scenes are beyond you or, their name is so big, they just don't want to deal. Every once in a while, someone will meet someone through Shooter and they of course want to hang out with Shooter. And then the rest of the guys in the band are kind of like, chop liver. But that's okay. I totally get it. And we all make those decisions that way. And
sure.
It's like, if we're going to meet someone and they've been a lifelong fan of Wilson Jennings and Jessi Colter and now love what Shooter's done for the last 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
Of course, they're going to be psyched to hang with him.
Sure.
And not only is Shooter my friend, but he's also my boss.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't want to step in there and be like, oh, did you know that Shooter's bass player makes his own record? I don't do that.
No, you can't. Yeah.
I want to be as cool. I'm thankful for him and his friendship and the music we make. So I want to be respectful of that.
Totally get it. Yeah.
I want to do what I do, but have it be this cool parallel thing. When there's an overlap, I think it's great.
Yeah.
But I don't want to push it, So yeah, the marketing is definitely a part of it. My dad was a small businessman and an independent businessman. He had his own companies for many years. So I know I got a lot of that instinct and some of the specific skills just literally from him.
Well, just being smart enough to say, let me collect your names. Because, that's the whole, excuse me, sorry. I have my phone on silence, but it doesn't work for some reason. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
God, I can't stand that.
No, but marketing is kind of from a certain angle, it's a necessary evil. If I could hang out and just do music all day,
of course,
man, those are the best days of my life.
Right.
And some long session days, or I'll have when I'm at home, I'll have a rehearsal from 11 to 2, a session from 3 to 6, come home for dinner, have dinner with my family, and then have a gig from 9 to midnight. And it's like, I just got to play music for 9 hours.
That's a great day. Yeah.
That's an incredible day.
Yeah.
But also and even just being an unknown local musician, like I was in Seattle and in my first bunch of years in LA, it's like you're calling people and finding gigs and booking your own gigs. And there's a lot of organizational stuff. Some musicians and artists in general are so good that they never really have to develop those muscles.
Yeah.
Someone shows up and says, I want to be your manager. Let's do this.
That's really few and far between, though, man. I mean, that's
especially as the industry's changed in the last 10 years.
Totally.
There's been less money. The odds of being out there and making it are rare.
Yeah.
Guys like there are more of these artists who are like Marilyn Manson, who's a true artist, but he's really smart. And he knows exactly what he's doing and what's going on and what connections and the best way to and actually Shooter and his manager, Adam, are a really great team. They're both very smart. They're like, okay, well, what can we do to get, to release this kind of cool indie record we want to release, but give it the maximum potency and have the most people hear it. And so they're very smart about, let's make this video thing or release this exclusively through this channel. And this other song we'll do with this other channel, And it's like the whole DIY method is really, it's an intense one. So it's like I appreciate you saying that like just talking to me and looking at my website, you can feel that I have a feel for marketing. I could definitely have more of a feel for marketing, and maybe more of these records would sell and da 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 da. But I'm happy with how things are going. Like I really am. I really feel I'm kind of a craftsman in the middle of my career.
That's awesome.
And I just want to keep it going. Like I didn't. And every once in a while, not recently, but I used to have these conversations with my wife when someone would start getting really start blowing up, and I'd start getting jealous. Yeah. Like, come on, I'm busting my ass here. How come this isn't working? My wife would always say to me, "You never said let's move to LA so you can get rich and famous."
Ah, there you go.
You always said let's move to LA so you can make great music.
Smart woman.
She said that's what you wanted, and that's what you still want, and that's how you make your decisions, and that's how you live your life. And I'm like, you're totally right. You're right.
It's funny you say that. I spoke to someone yesterday, and they were telling me their dad told them something one time. Their dad told them, also a European immigrant from Germany, and the dad told them, never compare yourself to someone who's more successful than you.
Yeah.
It's like there's no winning there. There's no upside of that, so and that's a good thing to keep yourself grounded and shit like that. So. But anyway, hats off to you for doing all that stuff, man. I think
Thank you.
Credit your ambition and balls and not less. Also, just not being afraid because, like, what's the worst that could happen? Nothing. What are you going to get in trouble? Because someone going to discipline you for calling to get gigs booked? I mean, and taking down names, and that was clever, man.
Yeah. No, and also it's like there have been times when I didn't take the gig that paid really well.
Yeah.
Because I knew I wouldn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I did foster the gigs that, granted, you can't go out and play. If I wanted to, I could hang out for a month and do all gigs for free.
Of course. Lucky you.
Really fun.
Yeah.
But then, okay, it's time to get a day job.
Yeah.
You got to kind of juggle it and create work and be smart and find other talented people who are also making stuff happen.
Well,
That's part of the overall game, you know what I mean?
And you also have a couple of backups, you're doing production.
Yeah.
You do tracks, so it's not like you're relying on one stream of income. You have several things, which you need to in today's day and age.
Yeah. And that's also one of the things, like those couple of years where I was touring and doing my stuff all the time, like I realized I was missing playing bass with people and I was missing being in the studio. And I realized, man, I moved to LA to be a part of the music scene.
Right.
And get the inspiration that comes with that, not to come home and avoid going out because I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And I just want to have a week with my family. You know what I mean? So I kind of consciously decided, okay, I'm not going to stop touring, but let's do 1 week a month rather than 2 or 2.5 weeks a month.
Good for you, man.
Let's keep the touring thing alive. And I also remember thinking, I don't want to be 50 and have the only way I can make a living be on the road.
Yes, I totally get
I want to pursue more songwriting. And in LA, a great thing to do is licensing your songs to TV and film.
100%.
I haven't had major success in that world. Like I've never had a $15,000 ad, for Volvo or something like that.
Sure.
But I've had a lot of little things like that.
Yeah, but you keep building up that catalog and you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and you got to keep being a part of this larger community.
Yeah.
And it's been, and let's see, the 2 years before I started really touring a lot with Shooter, after my touring alone, I was a much happier person. Like I love playing.
Yeah.
I love singing. I love writing. I love touring. I love being at home. I love the studio. I love producing. And so I felt like a happier road for me was to be able to do all these things and the eclecticism of it.
Sure.
And the different skills involved make me a happier person. When I'm stuck doing one of those things too long, that's when I start getting unhappy.
I totally get that, man.
And part of the the depth of music and having a career in music is like it can keep shifting on me, or I can keep shifting it on purpose, depending on the year.
Yeah.
Like when I was real young, I got out of college and I loved jazz, and I did like only jazz for about 3-4 years. And then I realized, hey, my favorite jazz album is the Tom Waits record. That's not really a jazz album. That's a songwriter album disguised as a jazz, or disguised with a jazz band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like when Norah Jones first came out, I remember I had just like moved to LA, and I was like, wow, this is the singer-songwriter music with the textures and sophistication of jazz.
Yeah.
I love this music. And I got involved with a couple of guys who, you ever get into David Grisman?
The bluegrass guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievably eclectic.
No, I know exactly.
He did records with Jerry Garcia, did records with Sam Bush. Like some are real bluegrass purist kind of stuff. Yes. But some, like the best one, in my opinion, they combine gypsy jazz and folk and Celtic music and blues and bluegrass. Like it mixes it all together. And so I started playing with this very talented duo in Seattle when I still lived there that turned me out of this. I was like, wow, you can do all this stuff. And I can still have the jazziness that I love, but this really is folk music. And we're playing in Irish pubs and people are dancing and freaking out. It's like, and then these guys also had songwriter albums of their own and songwriter songs in the midst of our set. I was like, okay, this was very inspiring to me at the time. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I don't want to just do quote jazz. And I started getting into this kind of pool of eclectic American roots music, kind of leading to what I'm doing now. But I consciously remember like, wow, I'm doing all these jazz gigs and I'm not that happy. I want to be doing more of these folk gigs and blues gigs. And so it took me a year maybe to start meeting more people in those other worlds and getting gigs like that. So I wasn't, I also was realizing, okay, I'm probably never going to be a world-class jazz guy. Wynton Marsalis is not going to call me up.
Right.
And I realized, hey, Take the A Train is the Sweet Home Alabama of jazz.
Yes.
And it's hard to do and hard to do well. So the learning curve for getting better and deeper, more involved in the history of jazz and the different styles of the different players and composers is heavy. And so after 3 or 4 or 5 years of that, I was like, I've learned a ton, and now I can take this with me wherever I go, rather than sticking to this definition of myself as a jazz musician, which made me happy a year ago and is not making me happy now.
Yeah.
So it's like finding, like kind of paving your new road.
Well, I give you credit again for
it was a big one. And that's happened numerous times in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Credit to you for like doing that on your own, not waiting for, you just said I had to make the right connections. And I think the other thing that you seem pretty good about is, and I'm good about stuff like this now, but I wasn't years ago. Like you said, I made my connections and it took me like a year. And it sounded like you were okay with that. Like I know with me, I've always been like, all right, I got to do this tomorrow.
No, believe me, I'm like that too.
Yeah. And it's just not
hard. I can look back on that time and see.
Yeah.
But I remember being really frustrated.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Wow, I got 4 more months of jazz gigs every night. And I'm like, ugh. One of the things that I started to do to stay sane is I started booking more gigs with singers and less with horn players, because I realized I love the melody.
Yeah.
And I love those Cole Porter and those Gershwin songs, and the Great American Songbook, the standards. And that's also when jazz was pop music, is when the singers, like there's a powerful thing that happens when someone sings in English at you. Is you hear a story in a much more, most of us hear the story in a more specific way.
Connection.
Rather than, instrumental music that sounds like they're soloing the whole time.
Yeah, there's a connection.
And so getting into the vocal side of things rather than the instrumental side of things is one of the things that kind of made me real happy and proud for a while. But yeah, it's frustrating when but there were also many of these kind of plateaus. You're like, okay, I'm not really getting better. I want it to be different, and I don't know how to make a change. It takes you a while to figure out.
Yeah,
there are definitely adult growing pains that you deal with
for sure.
Especially as you're dealing with whatever your career, whatever your career is.
Yeah, totally.
And figuring out how to have a good balance. It's hard. It's hard.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New York. I grew up in Westchester.
Oh, really?
Suburb just north of New York City.
Yeah, man. I didn't know you were from the city. That's so funny. That's real funny, man. I had no idea.
Yeah.
What was what's that?
Oh, no. And we were just back there with Shooter, so it was pretty great.
That is cool.
Yeah.
What was your childhood like growing up?
I was very shy. I was very quiet. I started playing trumpet in the 4th grade, and I loved soccer and loved swimming. And then when I was around 13, I got a guitar, and I started joining rock bands, and that was a really big part of my kind of developing identity. And I kind of switched over from sports to just getting into music completely. Like I just kind of, in fact, it was my sophomore year of high school, and all the cool seniors were in a band, and their bass player, I don't really know the full story, but he kind of partied too much, or maybe he got arrested for something. So his parents sent him to a military school.
Oh, wow.
So all of a sudden, the best rock band in our high school was guitar, great singer, and great drummer, and they were all seniors. They didn't have a bass player. So they asked me to join. And the same year, our school was doing Bye Bye Birdie.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which I don't know if you know, but one of the things in Bye Bye Birdie is like this Elvis-like character. And so there's a rockabilly band on stage. That's his band. Yeah. And so you kind of wear leather jackets and you walk around following him. Every once in a while you have a line. And then you play a half a dozen songs in the show. So these guys asked me to be the bass player in their rock band and also in Bye Bye Birdie.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I was like, okay, soccer practice or be in the coolest band in high school. So,
yeah.
So I quit the soccer team that day and switched over to music and kind of never looked back. That's
cool. Plus you get to hang out with cooler guys because they're older.
Well, they were older and just, more worldly. And it was great. It was great. And then kind of from then on, I was always involved in the high school big band and the orchestra and student conducting and the theater company stuff. And I was always in like 2 or 3 or 4 rock bands at any time. And all through college, I was afraid to be a musician. And so I was an English and philosophy. I double majored.
Oh my God. Where'd you go to school?
SUNY Binghamton.
Are you kidding me?
University of New York at Binghamton.
I went there for 2 years, man.
Are you serious?
Funny. Yeah. Vestal Plaza.
Yeah, I remember. In fact, I still have a great bass that I got at Vestal Plaza.
That's so funny.
Yeah, there was that weird little music studio and that music store there. I remember walking through the woods to the little graduate dorm area.
I don't remember that. It was
whatever. But I lived in Dickinson.
That's so funny. And it was like all those Geneseo beer we used to drink.
Yup. Yeah. The Southern Tier, man. Upstate New York.
That's so funny, man. That is wild. I think I'm probably
went there, and I even though I wasn't a music major, I was always in like 5 bands.
Okay.
Every single day I had a rehearsal. I was in the big band and the orchestra, and I was the music director for a bunch of pit orchestras. And I was in a jazz band and a ska band and a rock band, and I was a DJ at WHRW, the college station. So I had a bunch of good friends through that. Was also in some bands with those guys. So yeah, and it was, and then it wasn't until the end of college, and I was already applying to grad schools for English. I said, man, if I don't try music, I'll hate myself because I'll know it. I know it's just fear that's holding me back. So I was like, okay, well, let's try music for a year or 2, and then I can always apply to grad school. If
sure.
It's not working. If music's not working out and I have to get a job at a frame store or whatever else, or become a barista, then I'll go to grad school.
Okay with that, yeah. That's
so
great.
I just started doing music and just never stopped. Within a few months, I was doing enough gigs to make my living, and then I just kept doing it.
Did you come back to the city? Where'd you go after college?
Oh no! After college, my girlfriend in college wanted to move to Seattle.
Okay.
She had driven across the country with her ex-boyfriend and loved Seattle. And so I moved after college. I moved out to Seattle with her.
Oh, wow. That's great, man. What a good experience.
So we started in Seattle, and Seattle was a great city to learn how to gig in.
Yeah.
And play. There were a ton of bars and talented people, and Microsoft was booming. The city was growing. Starbucks was growing.
Sure.
And so there was a lot of money and a lot of hearts. It's a really like bohemian and kind of NPR friendly town. So that's where I learned to play. I knew how to play, but that's where I learned how to make a living, and asking people for money.
Yeah.
Do gigs and stuff like that.
Do you know Jeff Fielder?
The name is familiar.
Guitar player.
But I don't know if I know him.
Yeah, he's a Seattle guy, Jeff Fielder.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow, that's really funny. What kind of work did your dad and mom do when you were growing up?
My mom was a high school English teacher in the New York City school system for many years. And then she retired from that and then started teaching more around Westchester in private schools and stuff. And my dad was kind of an independent businessman, and he did kind of different companies. He was in advertising for a bunch of years. And so I remember going to visit his office, and they'd have like the big art desks.
Oh, yeah.
Like the millions of colors of magic markers.
Sure.
And people would be drawing out what ad campaigns would look like.
Yep.
I remember he had one of the first and biggest. It was like this super high-tech, basically photocopy machine that would print out your ad.
Yeah.
And this thing was like the size of a room, and this little like 24-inch by 10-inch page would come out of perfectly printed stuff that you could then send to TV or whatever, make a billboard out of.
Sure.
So he did that for many years. He was in real estate for a while. He ended up working in computers. My dad became quite a motivational speaker as well. So he would do these things where he would sell kind of computer software to a company, and then would go back every month to teach them how to do it and give kind of motivational speeches about how to keep your company together.
So he's a good sales guy, is what it sounds like.
He was a good sales guy.
Right.
He was a great sales guy.
Is he still around, your dad?
No, my dad passed away in 2005.
Man, sorry about that. Oh,
yeah.
It's terrible. Sorry.
No, he was a wonderful man, but he made a lot of his dreams come true.
That's
I think a lot of the independent spirit, and he loved music, but he wasn't really artistically into music the way I got.
Sure. So
when I was younger, he was very proud of me as being an entrepreneur. He thought I was an entrepreneur, and my craft was making music.
It's true. That's what you guys are.
It's very true.
Absolutely.
But it's not my perspective on it at all.
Interesting.
But I really learned a lot, just kind of about dealing with people, because his attitudes were so different, and it didn't make him any less proud of me. But he was proud of these other things that I thought were just a necessary part on the road to making music.
Right.
Because he was really proud of these other things, and it was a big deal. Like when I moved to Seattle, I was like, I'm never going to borrow money from my parents. Right. Because he was like, you're going to be broke. There's no structure in the music industry. In most industries, you can get an education, go to grad school, or go to medical school, and then you have a great job. With music, there's no plan or road like that. Yeah, you don't do this for 2 years, and you take a test and do this for 6 months, and you apprentice.
Yeah,
totally. And so my dad said numerous times, like, you're going to be living on our couch, you're going to be miserable and broke, and you're just asking for a lifetime of failure and da 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 da. Wow. So I said, all right, I'm going to do this, and because I knew that being financially dependent was a big deal to him. And I was like, I'm never going to let that happen.
Did that fuel you?
In a way, it wasn't like, I'd kind of internalized that as a lesson. Okay. It's not like I did it out of spite or anger.
Like righteous indignation or something?
Yeah, it wasn't coming from that place.
Yeah, okay.
It was coming from, I want to prove it to myself and to him that I can do it. That's kind of what it was more about. Yeah, so it was more of a positive. So I just lived with my girlfriend, who later became my wife.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah. And then I would send him, every time I did a CD, someone would hire me to play on an album.
Right.
I send it to him.
That's cool.
And he was like, who are these people? And I was like, well, there's a lot of music below the level of famous people that you know, who are making music, and that's what I'm doing. I'm making a living doing it. It's like en route to playing with Frank Sinatra or the Eagles or someone like that. There's a lot of ways to make a living music. And so that was great.
That's very cool, man. Good story there, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Advice, if you had to go back and give younger you advice, like what advice would you have given yourself to make your life less stressful or happier or easier? Doesn't necessarily be music, just music, business, personal, whatever.
I'd kind of say relax and enjoy it more, because I was uptight, and I still kind of have that instinct. I worry, I over worry. I think about like the politics of a situation more, and sometimes I get paralyzed by it.
Yeah.
I wasn't cool when I was a kid. I was kind of I started out from the music nerd side of things.
Right.
And I just remember being shocked when, like, the end of high school, I was invited to the cool kids party so I could play music there.
Right.
So I could be in the band. And that kind of gave me some access to that world, but I was never really cool.
Yeah.
And so learning how to relax more and kind of hold your own in a conversation without being somewhat geeky, but not too geeky.
Yeah.
All that stuff. I would say relax and just let it be.
That's good advice.
That's my my lesson to myself. I think I worried enough that I don't know. You know how when you're in a group of people and someone's too much of a worrier?
Yeah.
Or they're being too heady?
Yeah. Overthinking or something?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I did that too much.
Yeah.
And now I still have to remind myself of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like rarely do you just get a whole new mind-blowing lesson in life. Usually
yeah, little tweaks, man. You make little
you relearn some lesson you learned before.
Yeah.
And you learn it better or from a different perspective, or you get a little more zen with it.
Yeah.
But there's a way to be focused and do your homework and do a really good job, but not be racking your brain about how to do it better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And many of the dumbest mistakes I've made on stage is because I'm overthinking something.
Yeah,
I feel it going. I feel the song going somewhere, and even though we're not supposed to go to the bridge yet, I see people starting to do it, and then my brain will say, "No, wait, but we worked on it that way. The bridge is supposed to be like this," and then you do that, and you're like, "Okay, now I'm the only one who made the wrong decision there." Even if I quote, "I'm the one who made the right decision," I'm the one who sounded bad.
Yeah,
and I should have followed the gang and the momentum.
Right.
And instead, I made myself play by some fictional rule book in my head.
Yeah.
And I just kind of stepped on my own foot right there.
Are you a rule breaker or a rule follower by nature?
I'm definitely. I think I'm a rule follower.
Yeah, that's probably So I understand that. Yeah. Yeah, that would be.
Sometimes when I'm the band leader, I love winging it.
Yeah.
And I love going and letting the arrangement be what it wants to be. But then it's also my responsibility to give good cues.
Sure.
And one of the advantages to being the bass player and the singer when I play with my band is I can yell, "Hey, wait, hang on the one," and then I can do an obvious walk up to the microphone and start singing the new section. So I can having been a sideman for so many years, I know what it's like to try to just give the clearest, biggest cue without overdoing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally.
So that if I have good guys and women who are playing with me, I can kind of lead the way, so that we're all subtly winging it together.
Yeah, I totally.
And they're not confused, and it's not totally by the book. So I like if there was a third category between a rule breaker and a rule follower, I'm a big fan of improvisation.
Right. Right. It's in the middle. Yeah.
And one of the best things about music really is when you can wing it together.
Yes.
When everyone's really listening and either on the same page or following each other. As life keeps changing. Music's supposed to keep on changing too.
Yeah. It's funny. My wife tends to be more of a rule follower, and I am very much a rule breaker. And not that I go out of my way to but I just, do my thing and worry about the fallout later. And my daughter, apparently, who I've constantly butted heads with for 18 years, but now we're sort of like finding this way, is exactly the same way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my wife's always saying, God, she's just like you, because she doesn't obey anything, And
that's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. And I just, because I was listening to you and I was thinking, Anne worries about stuff like that. And I'm like, geez, who gives a shit? What's going to happen?
Why slow yourself down?
Like, what's going to happen?
Some of my best friends or most inspiring people I've been around are the ones who say, screw it, man.
What's the what's the worst that could happen? So I'm going to beat you up, so yeah. Man, let's talk Desert Island Discs. Let's just talk about this for a minute. What would be your top 3 Desert Island discs in no particular order, just for today, knowing you could change them tomorrow?
Okay. We were just talking about the jazz years of me. So I'll say Tom Waits, The Heart of Saturday Night is one of the big ones. More recently, one of the guys that got me into folky stuff is Nick Drake.
Oh, yeah.
So 5 Leaves Left.
Yeah.
And actually, a few years ago, I did a record called Night Owl, which is the one with that photo shoot where I'm in the leather jacket at night. Yeah,
that's a badass photo.
I wanted most of my records I love great ballads and storytelling and mellowness and moodiness, but I always have party songs on a record.
Right.
So Night Owl was the first one where I said, I'm just going to make an album that still you can raise the energy a bit, but it's a moody experience. Meant to be a nighttime listening thing. And so that idea was inspired by Nick Drake and the record 5 Leaves Left.
Yeah, he's a pretty brooding, I think he's
a dark one.
Yeah, he's a dark one.
He's a dark one.
Yeah.
But there's also a real beauty. Like there's a real youthfulness and British Isles.
Oh yeah, I love that music. Don't get me wrong. I love it, but he's a dark dude. Yeah, I like that music.
Yeah. I'll say, and maybe it's a cop out to do a greatest hits.
No, man.
But I'll do Paul Simon, greatest hits, negotiations, and love songs.
Man, talk about a great a writer. Wow.
Yeah, and an arranger, and eclectically bringing in gospel music and like
African music,
reggae and doo-wop and African music. Yeah,
man. Well, of course, that they're from New York City, and I always think about. Did you ever listen to the concert in Central Park, Simon and Garfunkel?
Yeah,
I love that part when Paul Simon says, and I want to thank a special group of people. And I goes, I want to thank the Parks Department, and everybody boos. There's like 500,000 people there. He goes, I want to thank Mayor Koch, and everybody boos. And he goes, I want to thank the police, and everybody boos. He goes, and a little known group of people that just don't get enough credit. The guys selling loose joints. And then everybody's like, yay. That's because that was when they used to sell loose joints. Like you could walk through Central Park or go to the wherever and, loose joint, because you could buy a joint. Yeah. Back in the old days. I don't know what they sell now because that was just research. I don't know.
Of course. We can't indict ourselves.
Yes. Man, what's the most important things you've learned about yourself, Ted, through your career experience and through life in general?
You got to trust yourself. Like I remember one of those lessons that you learn a little bit more every year. It's like years ago when I started doing my own records, like I started out as a bass player in bands. And then when I wanted to sing more and get more serious about it, it's like, okay, you can do it. There are a lot of amazing singers out there. And so I realized, I'm never going to be the greatest singer or the greatest songwriter or the greatest guitar player, but I'm the only one who can do what I do.
Yeah.
And if I can come up with a version of what that is that I'm proud of, then putting that out into the world is worth it.
Totally.
And then every year you get a little better. I've now done a bunch of albums and
hell yeah.
I'm proud of the ones I've done, but I feel like they're getting better every year. My skills as a singer and a bass player and an arranger and mixer, and coming up with the sequence of the songs and all that stuff, I'm getting better each year.
Which is an art, man. It's like a science and an art. Yeah.
And dealing with the artwork also.
Yeah.
It's like, and then dealing with the business of getting it out.
Yeah.
Finding ways to, and especially with the the world's changing every year. You know, you can't trust the same media outlets you did 3 years ago, or
Sure.
the philosophy that you can't simply do it well once and think you can just do exactly the same thing again.
Correct.
So I think trusting yourself and allowing yourself to change is a big one. And being self-aware enough. Like there's one thing I used to say to myself when I was doing more freelancing. It's that if someone rarely will fire you. I've only been fired maybe a couple times ever in my whole life. But usually they just don't rehire you.
Right.
They just find someone better, and then just you gradually, there was one particular band, I was like a blues band out of Tacoma, Washington, and they gradually phased me out and phased in another guy.
Yeah.
And they didn't tell me why I got fired. And then I had to look back and think about why aren't I playing with them anymore? What did I do wrong? Or was it a personality thing? Or, you know, sometimes it's easy, and it's like, the singer's brother just moved out from Ohio, so of course he's got the gig now. But in some cases, you have to really kind of be self-aware as much as you can and say, okay, well, you got to pinpoint. This is what I think I did wrong, or this is the changing dynamic which led to me getting replaced. And trying to, some of that stuff you miss, and some of that stuff you're stubborn and you don't see it. Some of that stuff you're like, oh, that guy was an asshole. I did everything right, you know? And so you have to figure out which of those little truths is the actual truth.
Totally get it, man.
And that's a big, staying on your feet and trying to being self-aware and learn from your mistakes. That's a big one. And one of my goals for my whole adult life has been to avoid midlife crisis. Because I feel like midlife crisis is also a term that existed more when we were young. Because you had dads of your friends who worked at a company for 25 years and they believed in that company, and then they realized, wow, I'm not happy. What am I doing wrong? Or they got fired, and then they buy a muscle car.
A Harley or something. Yeah.
Or something like that. And you're like, okay, well, if they had been more self-aware and made little changes in their lives over the years, they would never have realized they were totally wrong and needed to make a blatant change.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like, I'm a bit older than you, I think, and then we see a lot of people like getting divorced, and I think a lot of it is, especially in their 50s, and I am very grateful because we have a really stable relationship with my wife, but I also look at some of these things, and a lot of this is just like repressed stuff. Like, I always wanted to do this and I never did. So fuck it. Now I'm doing it. And I'm like, man, I never wanted to be like that. I always kind of spoke up and just, I'd like to do, whatever it was,
No, I know what you mean. I totally know what you mean.
Yeah.
And if they had allowed that other repressed stuff into their life more.
Yeah.
Or maybe seen a therapist 8 years ago.
Right.
Or something.
All of which I've done.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Then it's like they would have been a happier person all this time, and they wouldn't need to, leave their wife and their child behind and go to wherever else and start a new life.
Right.
And then move to the islands and live like Jimmy Buffett.
Right. Yeah.
You could making gradual little changes in your life to make yourself happier next year. That's one of the things about being a musician that I've really loved, is you can do that.
Yeah.
Rarely is it ever so complete and extreme. And let's take, playing with Shooter.
Yeah.
It's a pretty, like this last year, Shooter came out with a new record. I had to put my new record on hold because I didn't want to put it out while I'm touring all the time with Shooter.
Sure.
So that was frustrating.
Yeah.
But I was like, I believe in Shooter. I believe in what we're doing. I'll put my record out this winter when I go to Europe, and I'll put it out next year. And I'll live the rest of my life that's not on the road with Shooter as much the way I want to and can.
Yeah.
And it was like I produced a bunch of records this year. Thankfully, some of the other artists I was working with were happy to let me juggle the scheduling, So it worked well.
Who's had the biggest influence on your life, musically and personally?
Who had the biggest influence? Musically, I might say Paul McCartney.
Interesting.
Yeah. His eclecticism as a songwriter and his sheer talent as a musician, his super melodic bass playing was a big influence for me. The way he and John Lennon handled each other. And as you get older as a musician, you understand that more. I remember being in high school and hating Yoko Ono. You know what I mean?
Yeah, thinking she broke the Beatles
because
up.
It was a very simple, she broke up the Beatles.
Yeah.
And then the more you get into it, you realize, okay, well, let's look how different the four of them were.
Yeah.
And actually the way John and Paul were as songwriters and as people and the way they handled their stuff. And then when John met Yoko and Paul met Linda, it's like I was married. As I'm realizing these things, I'm like, okay, well, you have a woman that loves you. She helps you become who you are.
Yeah. If you're lucky.
Gives you the confidence. She doesn't say, leave these guys behind. They're assholes. Yeah. She says, you're great and I want you to be happier. Yeah. You should realize your dream. Yes. You know what I mean? And I'm especially in a tumultuous thing. I'm sure there were moments of them saying, get rid of these assholes.
Of course. Yeah.
But that's part of it, you know? And also how whatever, he just has so many melodies and songs that have just kind of changed all of our lives. For sure. And I can't tell you how many times I've driven around listening to Beatles music and just getting moved and wanting to have a song that kind of does something similar. But the list of musical influences are many. Leon Russell is one of them. Huge one. Chris Christopherson is a huge one. There are many. Jessi Colter is another big one. Shooter's a huge one. The sheer amount of music I've made with him and his influence and his ability to say fuck it and be himself is really a deep one. Influence on my personal life. My wife is probably the biggest one. You know, we've been through a lot together. We've been married, you know, like I said, we moved out from college together.
That's a long time.
So, you know, we've been together more than half of my life. Yeah. You know,
that's awesome.
And we've been through a lot and understanding each other and trying to be honest with each other and go through our little, you know, when you have, you know, we're all going to change a little bit each year.
Yeah, you got to be hoping you're lucky enough to those changes stay fitting in, man.
Yeah,
it is a crapshoot,
and you have to stay in communication about that.
Yeah, it is,
and kind of find each other. Like I remember, I don't think about this so much now, but when we were like 27, 28, and 30, and 32, and 33, you're like, wow, I'm becoming a different person. Yeah, and that's why people get divorced. Yeah, realize, hey, this person doesn't understand me anymore. Yeah, or she's changing to be this other thing, and I'm changing to be this other thing, and we'll simply be happier apart. Yeah, I need to find a new person to love me who's more like me now. Right. And being able to stay with her and communicate those changes that you're going through, and try to understand the changes that she's going through. Like a huge part of my adult life is my wife. Yeah, and a lot of my songs, a lot of the love songs are about a little moment of our lives. That's cool. Whether they're the regret or the positivity or the coming together at the end of an argument or me missing her when I'm on the road or me, you know, seeking some dream that she's supporting from the sidelines.
It's very cool, man.
Yeah.
Any non-musical superpowers?
I used to be really good at stained glass.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I haven't done it in a long time, so that's not really a superpower, but I loved doing it for a while. And one of the great things about stained glass is when you make something, it's a physical, tangible thing that exists. Yeah. So like I made a bunch of things for my parents, and then every year I go back to visit them, and then there it is. Right. I've made some gifts for my wife. Or like Christmas tree ornaments and stuff like that. Sure. And it's like that thing will always exist, and you can take it out and look at it and hold it. Whereas music has a whole other power because you can remember how a song makes you feel.
Yeah, it's pretty compelling.
And re-experience it. But it's a different thing. You have to like walk over to some kind of a stereo or iPad or iPod and play it again. And even then you can re-experience it, but it's not going to be as good as it was last time, quite possibly. You know, you could be listening to your favorite Van Morrison song and then someone's talking to you. So you're distracted by it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this old friend that keeps changing on you. Superpowers, I don't know. I'm good at puzzles.
There you go.
And good at math. So I'm definitely helping my son out learning his math nowadays, which is being the
he's in like what, fourth grade?
He's in the fifth grade.
Fifth grade. Okay.
Being the dad who knows basic science stuff, you can talk about why the sky is blue and how your carburetor works. You know, talking about some of the basic stuff has definitely helped me with my wife and son. You know, remembering 8th and 9th grade science class. I mean, that merits as a superpower.
Oh, good, man. 2 more questions, Ted. Talk about a specific experience that changed your life or altered the way you think about things.
Moving to Seattle after college. One of my biggest things, I could have moved back to Westchester and lived with my parents.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of friends who moved to New York City and were waiters who played gigs once or twice a week. And I made a decision to go all the way across the country with a girl I didn't even know that well, to try to make music. And I found in the newspaper a used acoustic bass that I bought within a week of living there. And I just started figuring out how to meet people and make music. Now, I already knew how to make music, but when you're not doing it with your friends,
sure,
and now you're asking to get paid, and you're trying to begin a career, that was a lot of mind-blowing stuff that happened. And also, Jenna and I really grew together. You know, like she worked at the Payless shoe store, and we both had little funky jobs, and I was playing with like the first people I met, which was not always my favorite people or the best music. But so figuring out how to pay our bills for the first time and share an apartment and compromise on who's going to decide what we eat for dinner. Sure. All that stuff. That was really when I started, you know, that's when you start being an adult, when college is done.
Yeah, when you got to foot the bill on shit, that's when you start being an adult. Absolutely. I would agree with that. And man, last question. Biggest change in your personality over the last 7 to 10 years, and how much of this was deliberate and how much has just been a natural part of aging?
A few things. One is I had to learn how to be mellower. I mentioned that a little bit before. I consciously learned, or I constantly started to absorb and appreciate the soulful side of music all through my 20s and 30s, and get out of the music school, this is perfect, or this is proper, into the real music. The real value of music is what it makes you feel.
Gotcha.
And the story you're telling, not if you're perfectly in tune. Or like there are all these great moments when people talk about a great song and say, yeah, but in terms of music theory, it's wrong. It's not supposed to work.
Right.
But it does. It feels really good. You know, that's part of the power to some of the Beach Boys stuff as Brian Wilson got more sophisticated. That's part of the power of Nirvana.
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain, and actually Soundgarden, actually the whole grunge scene was like a pretty great example of saying, okay, well, regular music theory is getting boring to us, so we're going to put these extra dissonant chords in here. And then you go, wow. In some cases, it's too dissonant and dark, and it doesn't make sense to people. And in some cases, you go, wow, that's a whole new emotional thing. You just got out of this chord progression. That's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And so and also, like, I really loved soul music. My first album I named North South, because I was a Northerner getting into Southern music.
Oh, very cool.
And there's a real great thing that happens in the best Southern music. Well, in the best music in general, but like it's the soul thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And you just have to relax and do it and tell your story. You're allowed to edit your song and make it as potent as it can be. But when it comes time, you get into it and you do it. That's one of the powerful things about the blues is you can hear a half dozen or a dozen artists all do the same song. But they do it differently and they do it their own way. You know? You can hear Etta James do one thing with it and Jimmy Reed do a whole other thing with it.
Sure.
And Robert Johnson do a whole other thing with it. And coming up as a kind of a white kid in the suburbs of New York, I came at it from rock music and pop music and Bob Dylan and you got to write your own music. That's what makes REM so special, or Van Halen so special.
Sure.
They write their own music, or most of it, and so relaxing into and accentuating what you do that's special and feeling it is the big one.
That's cool, man. Glad you're headed there, man. And first of all, I want to shout out to Matt Slahetka for hooking us up.
Yeah, Matt's a wonderful, wonderful friend.
A good guy. And you've got a new album coming out, so why don't you talk about that? It's called Walking Shoes with No Jeans. I think you're going to be touring Europe. We want to talk about that for a few minutes?
Walking Shoes with No G.
Oh, okay. You know what? I messed it up.
Walking shoes.
Walking shoes. Yeah, walking shoes. Yeah. Okay. I thought that was the title. I was like, no jeans. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to judge. Whatever. You got to have some meeting. Okay. Walking shoes. Talk about walking shoes.
Okay. It's 13 songs, and most of them are about traveling or chasing a dream or wanting your life to be different and knowing it could be and striving for something. And so Walking Shoes evolved as a title because it's a metaphor that's about, if I want to change, I got to do it.
Yeah.
So the most simple, basic thing you do is you put on your shoes and you start the journey.
Very cool, man. And that's going to be released here in the States in early mid-March, and hopefully Ted will come back on the show. We'll talk about that. Let me tell you some places where you could find Ted. First of all, his website is really cool. It's Ted Russell Kamp, and it's Russell, Russell, 2 S's, 2 L's, Kamp, Kamp. So it's tedrussellkamp.com. On Instagram and Facebook, it's either Ted Russell Kamp or Ted Russell Kamp Band. And let's see. Also, Ted's available. He's produced 15 records outside of his own, so he's probably produced in the mid-20s. And if you like what you're hearing and you want to talk to him about maybe producing your record or producing you or consulting on your record, give him a shout. And I think, is Facebook or Instagram the best place to find you on that?
Yeah, I think Facebook is the most. Okay, Facebook great. Is the easiest, and also is now immediate, comes up on your phone right away.
Awesome. So find him on Facebook, and he's also available for session work out of his LA home studio on bass, and once in a while, if it's right, for guitar. Man, anything else? Any other words of wisdom or anything else I missed?
No. Thank you for having me on the show. It's been great to meet you. Finally, at least visually. Yeah. We've been emailing and chatting on the phone a lot.
Yep, man.
Thanks for having me as a guest. You've got an amazing series and list of people who have already been on it. So it's an honor to be another one in the in the group. It's an honored group. So
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. That's my honor, my pleasure. Thanks, Ted. I appreciate it. And I look forward to your album coming out. And good luck on your European tour. You're going out to Europe soon.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with a friend on your social media channels. We certainly appreciate your support and help. Thanks again to Ted Russell Kamp for spending time with us. I truly appreciate it. Again, check out his music. It's Ted Russell Kamp, 2 S's, 2 L's, and Russell's, KAMP.com. And make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.